Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Scrutiny Finance Review Group. I've got my little script, which I'm supposed to read out, so here goes. Please note that it is intended to live stream tonight's meeting of the Scrutiny Finance Review Group. However, due to ongoing technical issues, this may not be completely successful. If it is successful, a recording of the meeting will be available on the Council's website within 24 hours. The induction loop is now operating. Members and officers, please remember to switch microphones on and speak directly into the microphone and switch off again after speaking. It is important that you speak directly into the microphone with your mouth pointed at the microphone, because the acoustics in this room are appallingly bad. Reporting officers using Teams, I don't know whether we have any this evening. No, we don't have any, so that's not relevant. Any exempt or private items on the agenda, the live stream will cease prior to the meeting moving into private. There may then be a short delay. Right, here we go then. Have we any apologies?
None, Chair.
No apologies from... No? Okay. We've got two lots of minutes. The 27th of March and the 21st of May. The May minutes actually make a reference to the Vice Chair. We don't have a Vice Chair, so they are going to be altered before they're formally filed. Having said that, is everybody happy with the two lots of minutes? Anybody got any comments, questions, queries? No? In that case, I'll take it as your consent to sign. Remind you of your need to declare disclosures of interest. None have been received, I believe, so far.
None, Chair.
No. And section 106, again, no disclosures been received. I remind you that you need to disclose any interests, either now or immediately before the item comes up. I believe we've got no references from other committees. The Chair's announcements, only one, and that is I'm not terribly comfortable with taking to follow items. Sometimes it is necessary. I've had a conversation with relevant officers before this evening's meeting, and I understand why the to follow items were listed as to follow. But I think we should make it clear that when we're dealing with to follow items, the presenting officer will be expected to explain why the item wasn't available to be circulated with the other items on the agenda. That's all I have to say at the moment. Thank you. So we move on to item 8, finance updates. Deb, do you have anything you wish to say that isn't already covered in item 9?
Yes, Chair. We'll take both 8 and 9, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So this is the outturn, so the provisional revenue and capital outturn for 23-24. That will go through the process of audit as well. And you will see that throughout the year, we have been reporting, and the quarterly forecasts, they are presented in table just above paragraph 8, page 9/4 of the agenda. So the recommendation is in front of the group, but this is a report. The report is going to executive on the 24th of June, and these are recommendations for the executive. So it is attached as an attachment to the main FRG report. So if you go on paragraph 7, the overall provisional general fund revenue outturn position is roughly more or less break-even. So when you go through the detail coming from provisional to final outturn, we need to have a balanced budget. So, but right now it's more or less breaking even. However, you will see the corporate items, the core service deficit, so gross core service deficit, which is before the allocation of the corporate items like interest and contingencies, it's 9.3 million, which is net of already the council has delivered 2 million of savings in year. And the main items you will see on the page 9/3 is mainly those we have been sort of reporting throughout the year. So you will see 2.8 million overspend in adult social care, 3 million overspend in housing. Some of these are net of grant, and 2.5 on children placement, 3.2 on school transport, 3.4 on supported living. But there's some positive as well, over recovery of housing benefit overpayment, and there was some savings on energy costs as well, which at that time when we prepared the budget, we were a bit cautious in terms of how much inflation is going to carry on energy costs. The table below on page 9/4 gives you Q1, Q2, Q3, and then it gives you the outturn. And the outturn is based on before deficit recovery plan and after deficit recovery plan. So we have to look at how much deficit recovery plan had an impact on the outturn and the bottom line. We put some charts there, which gives you a little bit more. Unfortunately, it's not in color, so my apologies. Sometimes you can't see it if it's not in color. So it gives you per department, and the chart below shows in chief exec, so it's much easier to look at it from visualizing the table, which is more in numbers. And then if I take you through to the detail where it says here the main areas, other than, I will come back on public health and HRA, but there's trading account as well, which is on the next page, just paragraph 14, which is a net surplus of 1.2 million. And then you've got the corporate element, which is the underspend of 5.8 against borrowing costs. This is paragraph 16. So if you look at the 9 million, which is a core service overspend, and then there's underspend in corporate, i.e. 5.8, plus you've got contingencies, which is paragraph 18, and out of the contingency, we release 3.1 million. So when you take 9 plus 5.8 on corporate, plus release of contingency, which at the end of the year, we get approval from the leader and the chief exec, and that's how we end up in a sort of balanced budget position. And that's basically on the general fund. And I'm quite happy to take any questions, Chair, before I move on the capital and the other element of the report.
Questions? Aslam, yes, I'm sorry. You put your hand up.
Sure. Yeah, first of all, my apologies for being late. And I just wanted to, I know housing is included in here. I don't have any pecuniary interest, but, you know, I'm a landlord, so I just wanted to declare that upfront, just to let you know. So I don't think that it has any impact on decision making, but I thought that it would be good that you're aware of it.
Thank you very much.
And I do have questions, but if you want to take anybody else before me, that's okay.
Thank you.
So Dev, on the airport general fund, on the airport bit, we can see that it's got about 15,000 approved budget, but then we don't see any expenses on Q1 to 4, or am I reading this a bit differently?
I think the airport one is not significant. So this is not the Luton Rising budget. This is mainly because the airport, they don't employ staff. The council, we employ staff. And then we recharge practically everything. So that's why you will see it's 0. But the bit which you're saying, the outturn, so approved budget 15, outturn is 15, means it's more or less in line with the approved budget. So that's why you will see in the last column, the variation is more or less 0. So we had a budget of 15, the outturn is 15, variation 0. So basically, all the costs, like all the directors, all the staff who work for the airport are employed by the council, and by and large, everything gets recharged. So you end up a slight variation, but nothing significant. Yeah.
Anybody else? Yes.
Thank you very much, Dave, for the report. Quite clearly, there are a lot of overspends, and And the report mentions this, it's because of demand, inflation. But for me, what is missing, and I remember going back 10 years ago, the whole strategy around sustainable council and managing some of these pressures was looking at streamlining services, looking at investing to grow projects, and also commercialization and trading services. And we were very confident that if we were able to deliver those things, we wouldn't be in the situation where we are. For me, we've invested a lot in the airport, and quite rightly so, but we have failed to deliver the concession agreement that's been going on for over a year. Now, if anyone decides on investing in a business, you want it to pay back, and pay back as you expect it. And if we got the returns that we expected, we wouldn't be in this situation as we are. And if we look at our trading services, if they were able to deliver the profits that we expected, we wouldn't be in the situation we are in. And when we look at adult and social care, that problem has been there for a very long time. We've always been overspent. It's always been the biggest cost to us. But when I look at the ICS budget, it's increased significantly. And I think it's from 1.6 to 2.2 billion pounds. I want to know what share have we got, because now we're providing care in an integrated way. So it's supposed to take pressure off us. And because that money gets spread across 3 or 4 different authorities, I would want to know, are we getting value for money for our adult social care? And when we look at transport, we've done about 10 reviews on it. We're still not getting value for money, it's still overspent. Now there's something missing here. We're just, pushing services from left to right, but we're not really looking at our strategies, we're not looking at our policies, and we're not really looking at whether we are getting value for money for those services that we're getting. If we get that bit right, we wouldn't be in this situation. So could you explain, why do we continue to be overspent on transport? Why is it that we're not getting value for money for adult social care from ICS? Why is it that we still are falling short from getting those return of investment from the airport? Thank you.
That's a lot of questions. If I've missed anything, just please remind me. Some of them I might have to come back. Some of them I might have to refer to officers, because adult social care, I don't have those information. But just, I think there's an acknowledgement, Councillor Khan, that demand and inflation is a big challenge. And there's an acknowledgement that it's a national issue, because demand in social care is going up, and our increase in council tax, which is capped by central government, it doesn't meet the costs in terms of social care. But that's a national issue. So inflation as well, even increasing the precept, increasing the inflation, we don't get the same rate of inflation, which was 10%. So the inflation and cost of living and the demand itself is creating a gap. And when I present the council budget, I always say we start the year with a 5 million gap. So far, if you look at the outturn, we've got the balanced budget, so we can look at the overspend and underspend, but over the years we have delivered the balanced budget, which is a positive. It's becoming more and more challenging. So the demand and inflation has not only the local government, has impact across, even private sector, even you're talking about commercialization, so some of the projects in terms of house building, it's becoming a challenge. Coming back to your point where we are saying why we've got to overspend, I think this is across, and if you look at the LGA, when they're making their comments, it says there is a big £1 billion of gap in local government financing. So, and on top of that, I think you will see from the corporate peer review report that the council is underfunded compared with similar authorities like London Borough. We've got similar challenges, but per head of population, historically underfunded. If you look at the core spending power per head of population, Luton is underfunded. If you look at the settlement as well, income average is underfunded. And that's where, coming back to your point about airport generates a net return of 28 million. Without that 28 million, just if you take 20 million out of the budget, there's a lot of services would have been very difficult to deliver. So the airport, despite all the challenges we went through COVID, and as a council, the airport was stabilized, still the airport is paying that interest. So the return on investment on the airport, because of the COVID, that has taken a dip, but now it's coming back to the passengers. Hopefully we get pre-pandemic level, and we are working with the airport. Potentially we're working towards getting a dividend, but even we are not getting a dividend, there's 28 million of net, after paying the interest, the net return in terms of the interest we are getting from the airport is 28 million. Coming back to your point about the transport, yes, the transport has been a challenge in the special educational need, but here as well, if you read all the consultant or advisors report coming out, that special educational need, a number of children having those need has gone up significantly. And that again across. You will see when my colleagues will be talking about our transformation, the delivery of the special educational need is an area working on. So even this morning we had a meeting at CLT talking about budget and financial resilience, and we talk a lot about the deficit recovery plan in that area. The budget, yes, agree, there has been a lot of reviews, but I think we'll have to look at the last 4 years was not easy. When we came out of COVID and we start to stabilize the system, we've got into the cost of living crisis. And that as well has led homelessness, is repossession and everything has caused a lot of challenges in terms of homelessness. So I think hopefully inflation figures are 2% today. So hopefully we are all hoping if that inflation is stabilized, if the interest rates start to come down, then that will ease the pressure, and if it is on people's personal budget, that will hopefully help towards the demand and inflation. The transport one, absolutely, we have to start to look at it. So we are looking at, and it's complex. Those demand-led services complex. When we're talking about adult social care, it's complex. We're talking about supported living, it's complex. It's cross-cutting. So we're looking at, with officers, we're looking at system level. So supported living in the budget sits in my area, but if you do something here, the pressure might come up somewhere in homelessness. So we have to be very careful not to create unintended consequences. Some of the projects here is taking longer than we expected, but as I said, the last 4 years after coming out of COVID, everybody is trying to stabilize things. Coming back on your commercial, yes, the council probably, I think I'll have to check, of the Westminster, Luton is the council, the second council with highest level of commercial income. So of the Westminster, it has served the council well. Still, the airport is generating 28 million of net towards helping delivering key services. The commercial side has been a challenge. And if you see the report, the income from commercial, the landscape has changed. We council as well, we had several properties, and now we are consolidating, and some of the properties we are using to rent them. So the private sector as well, people working from home, the commercial side of the properties has changed because of COVID, and we have to readjust. So in the couple of months, we've instigated a detailed report on our commercial portfolio and see what is going to be the strategy going forward. But we have to say we don't have big shopping centers, which over the last 4 or 5 years we bought. We've stopped investing in commercial properties unless it's for regeneration purposes. So we don't have the same exposure, but we have to look at our portfolio and to say where we're going to invest, where we're going to disinvest. So in terms of commercial properties, yes, this is happening. Trading is a challenge because we've got good areas like pest control. They won awards and everything, so we are looking at those areas where we've got a competitive advantage, where we know we don't want to go in every market where you see private sector has got that edge. So pest control is a typical example. BTS, we'll be talking about sort of not in the transformation, but BTS in area, we're looking at how best we're going to do that. So those are the things which I would say. But the airport, the return, I think the point you mentioned about the concession agreement. We already have a concession agreement. The supplemental agreement to deal with COVID was agreed long time ago. It took nearly 2 years because COVID there was the clause which they've instigated, the special force majeure, but that's done. And the airport has recovered better than we expected. So the amount of special force majeure fees which are paying back is less than we expected. But in terms of the concession agreement, that's a long-term discussion. So it's taking longer because these are the things which we're talking about beyond 2032. So we have to see for the council to get a reasonable rate of return. So that discussion is taking place, and we've discussed quite a long time, but there are a lot of things which I don't want to go in detail because that is commercially sensitive, yeah? So, but if you would like to discuss where we are, we're quite happy to do that. But I have to say there's both the airport and LOL are working towards that partnership to say, okay, it's a win-win for both LOL and ourselves to expand, but that also depends on what is the DCO. So these are the things, has got dependencies, has got things which we have to look at, and I have to say we have a lot of discussion which has taken place and a lot of progress has been made. But I don't want to go into much more detail. So hopefully I've tried to answer all your questions. If I miss something, I can come back. But I have to, end of that is I wouldn't say after COVID, when the airport was practically closed, we've stabilized the system. It's a system, it's not just the airport. You have to stabilize this LOL and everything. And if you look at the figures, the airport generates 28 million. That's how much airport brings to the council to deliver vital services. Thank you, Chair.
If you don't mind, Chair. Yeah, no, thank you very much for the explanation. I get that, that there is inflation, things have been difficult for all the councils, not just us. But we as a council have done better, but we could have done more. In my view, I know commercialization, I work in the sector. For example, school improvement services. Even some of the schools that we have don't buy services from us. We need to ask our questions why. Why some are and the others are not. And that was one of the services which was supposed to progress. And, you know, there could be, if they'd done that better, other schools could have got that service from us. And if you look at BTS, for example, that was again one of the drivers which was supposed to bring us better return. And even when we look at airport, had we reached the agreement, I know I don't want to go into it, there are sensitive information. If we reach an agreement earlier, that 30 million could have turned to 50 million, could have turned into more. What I'm saying is that there has been less focus on driving that commercialization agenda and streamlining services, as well as collaborating and challenging our partners to get better value for money. This is an area that we got to improve. You know, we cannot just blame everything on inflation and demand. We know that exists. Part of planning is projecting that. You know, COVID happened, inflation happened. It is here, it is real, but everything is not just down to that. We need to look at other areas where we can make improvements, and I think that we can, you know, we can come out of this better. Thank you.
Chair, I will take your concerns about school services, but one of the things which I may say here, that a lot of schools, when they're turning into academy, they are owned by big national, and they've got all the support services. So that's one of the area where we are losing. But I will take back to the analysis of the schools, but to still provide a lot of services, and you will see on the schools we've done quite well on this report on the trading. Coming back on BTS has been a challenge, and that's come back to when you're coming out COVID, all the cost of materials are going up and everything, and being sort of like an arm of the council, we can't necessarily increase the fees and charges the same way like a private sector will probably in the pricing they might pass the cost. So BTS, yes, we are spending a lot of time on BTS to look at it. And absolutely, as I said, coming out of COVID, everybody was adjusting. And right now, things are stabilizing, so we'll adjust and we'll see where the investment we can make, where our competitive advantage, where. And coming back to the airport, the reason I'm saying that because this meeting is live, so in the airport, if we sign an agreement, it would have increased the 28 million, because the 28 million is on the interest, so the debenture loan. And the council has already agreed that the maximum loan we provide to the airport is 507 million. So there's no plan to provide any additional loan. So the upside we get on that loan would have stayed the same. The agreement is more to expand beyond the 19 million, because LOL has already got an application, the planning for 19 million. So in the business plan and the budget, we'll be building our concession fee up to 19 million. So that as well will reach at appropriate time, because right now we haven't reached the 18 million. So that 19 million definitely will generate additional concession fee, and that additional concession fee will flow through LAL and will flow to the council. Signing the agreement is more what we do beyond that 19 million. And that has got a lot of things which needs to happen. And if we sign the agreement, it's the passenger numbers which grow the return from the airport. So that's the bit which I would say, if we sign an agreement, that doesn't mean we would have been generating 10 or 15 million, because that concession fee is driven very much by the number of passengers. So I don't want to go in much more detail, but I just wanted to say it's not just the interest wouldn't go up with max now. There's no additional interest, and the concession fee is driven by the passenger numbers, and the passenger numbers as we stand is maximum is 19 million. So I don't want to prejudge what this year will happen or what we'll do, because that's not my expertise, but the increase in the return from the LOL is dependent on the passenger numbers. Thank you, Chair.
David Wynne.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dev. A couple of questions, and then perhaps you can point me to the right place in the report for me to see. If I look on 9/7, we're talking there about the underspend because of the slippage in the capital programme spend, and it's related to the stage. Where do I find a full statement of what's happening with the capital spend? Because I see the stage, yes, but what other capital spends have slipped? And also, I tend to worry, a bit like Councillor Khan was just saying, I tend to worry a bit when I see that capital spend has slipped, as on the stage, but it's been almost by accident, not by positive action. And that, in a way, is playing along to some of the things I think Councillor Khan was talking about, because I see the stage, it's gone back in terms of the scope, it's got delayed, but I don't think we've made a conscious choice to make it happen that way.
That's very interesting, David, but we haven't actually reached the capital programme yet. So if you could just hold on that for a second, unless Dev is desperate to get some response in.
I can touch on that, because I think the point you're making here is we've got an underspend on our interest, and you're linking that underspend with the capital spend. So I will touch on that, and then I'll come back to the capital spend, but I might cover the capital spend. So the detail is on page 930 to 31. So there is some of the detail about the capital spend is there, and the stage is being one of them. So if I may touch on the stage, we were awarded 20 million from LUF, yeah, and and that is part of the figures. I don't know what the latest one, but I think the project is 130, 140 million. That was, and I'm coming back to the point I've made, is before we start to hit that inflation. Yeah. So the outline business case was done. The application for the 20 million was done, was a very early stage. So we make the application. So at that point, when we look at it, of course, when we do the outline business case, we look at the viability, we look at how we'll be funded, the affordability, delivery, and everything. But that was very much when we hit that inflation, where inflation to go through the roof. So there are councils which decided to give back the money to Deluxe to say, project's not viable, the left money, handing it back. We have been working with Deluxe to make sure that we deliver, because this is an absolutely critical strategic project for the town, and it's also for the housing. So officers have been working, coming back to your point, the scope, so we had to look at the scope, we had to work with Deluxe in order to make sure that the project's still deliverable and still viable. And right now, last time when the executive approved, the approval was to move to the next phase. So any project of this nature, we move to the strategic business case, outline business case, but I'm sure those commercial and residential, you look at which stage, the rebuy stage 3 or rebuy stage 4. So when you're reaching rebuy stage 3, rebuy stage 4, then you go to the detailed design cost. So the cost has been an issue, and coming back to the point I've made is inflation is what was agreed at outline business case, and what we start to look at closer to when we're going to the market, the cost has gone up. So when the cost has gone up, we could have easily say, okay, it's no longer viable. So officers work towards making sure the project is viable, and we have been spending money in order to do all the feasibility, all the viability assessment and everything, and that's what took longer, because we had to go back and discuss with Deluxe whether the scheme is acceptable. So that's why you have to reduce some of the scope to make the project viable. And it's come back to the point which I said is when we applied and when we start to go to the market, inflation, the cost of materials, some of them, I don't know how expert here, I hear 10, 15, 20%. And some companies who bid for construction projects, some of the companies has gone under. So that's what made, but still the stage when it was approved by the executive last time still is a project which we're working is tight, yeah, but officers, based on latest information I have, yes, we're still going ahead to deliver that project.
Just to follow up, Chair, if you want me to defer until later, I will. I think the fact that we've got anywhere close to having a balanced budget is actually a very good outcome given the funding that we've got. However, it is totally dependent upon us getting the recoveries that have been there before and which seem to be endlessly carried forward as far as I can see. I also worry because purely in one little area, you mentioned BTS earlier, and in one little area in my own ward in some meetings with residents, we found that the BTS was saying that work had been completed by subcontractors, and we found that it wasn't. So I worry about the level of control we have over both the savings and indeed the work of subcontractors.
If I may, Chair, I think that your concern about BTS, I will write to take it back because I won't be able to answer that, and Mark is here, but I think we can take it back. The point you're making about deficit recovery plan, I've said it last time as well, it's going to be a challenge. Is it going to be easy to deliver? And you will see we're talking about on the page 9/9, how much we have to deliver in terms of deficit recovery plan. The point you made, some of them has been with us for a couple of years or even more, absolutely, yeah, because we have been working and reporting on those. And those are the ones which I've said over the last 3-4 years, despite trying in terms of homelessness, the impact of COVID, the impact of inflation, it's not, it's the demand. And I think own members, probably you are getting from your own constituents how difficult it is to find as a private, and the cost is going up, the rent is going up, and there's inflation and there's interest rate. So I think what I'm saying here is inflation coming down and interest coming down, that should have a big impact. And that's what we're hoping things will stabilize. So you're right, special education in transport, we're trying to stabilize, cost is going up. And yeah, in fact, this morning we were discussing about children. We said the number of children which we are looked after has more or less stabilized, but the costs has gone up. And those providers are venture capitalists, so some of them has got a return on their investment. So the return on the private sector investment is costing the council, and some of the very specialist cases, which there are very few places where we can place, but we're discussing the cost has gone up, the numbers has not. So coming to a point, yes, over the years, if you look at those areas, homelessness, absolutely, yeah. But the other thing, if you think, I am sure Mark will, yeah, the number of people coming to the front door in terms of homelessness has gone up significantly. So still try to manage that, and the mother properties which we are trying to place our resident is the private sector is trying to rent it to the private market because we pay the LHA rate or slightly above LHA rate. So those are the pressures. Is it going to be easy? If I say it's going to be easy, how would be making my suggestion? It's going to be difficult, but we have to work across system, place level, with partners, working with residents, and because I don't think there's more money coming towards local government, respective which government come into. Yeah, it's the local government challenge is going to be as schools, as NHS, but local government has got this funding gap. So coming back to your point, yeah, delivery of deficit recovery plan, that's key, and Mark and Kate will be touching how we are going to do the transformation and how we deliver the deficit recovery plan. So we have to refocus, deliver with pace, deliver at scale in order to have a balanced budget. So far, the truth, we've done that. I'm just taking it 1 year at a time now.
Councillor Abbas.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you. I just wanted to say, I mean, 14 years of austerity has decimated lots of councils. And if you look nationally, over the last 5 years, we've had at least 10 councils issue Section 1114 notices. And even a survey done by the LGA in December indicated 1 in 5 councils were fearing issuing a Section 114 over the next year or so. So you can see the financial climate that local authorities are operating in. I just wanted to commend Dev and the council in the fact that we've been able to set balanced budgets throughout that period, and we are managing well. I understand there is room for improvement, and without going into the paper here about transformation programs, I think the next few years are going to be challenging with demographic rises, and the need of people and the complexity of need is going to be challenging. But I just wanted to ask Dev in terms of where do we sit with our reserves, in terms of what our reserve position is. Have we dipped into our reserves so far? And if you could even divide that reserves, because I know DSG and various bits have their own reserves. So if you could please answer that, I'm sure that will give confidence to the group that we're in a reasonably good position, but with lots of work to do.
I think, yeah, in terms of reserves, I have been here 9 years, sometimes I 6, 7, but last time I was counting is 9 years, and we haven't used the reserves to balance our budget. It has been difficult, members, officers, residents working, but we haven't used reserves. The only time was when we had COVID, but that we had the capital directive from central government of 49, but still we didn't call on all the 49. We just called on 15. So that as well, there was 49 million, which was we had to plug. And this year, no, we haven't dipped into reserves. If you look at 24-25 budget, which we've already approved by the council in February, still we're not using reserves. But the things are not getting easier. It's not getting easier. And we will have to work hard to have a balanced budget. And you will see, we'll talk about transformation. You'll see we have to work hard. And it's not just officers, with members, with everybody. it's not going to be easy, yeah? So, but we have a track record of delivering and having a balanced budget, but now we have to refocus more from the lessons learned, some of the areas where we can do better, and it's a learning process, but we are all, the corporate team is working very much like in terms of cross-cutting issues, not looking at areas in isolation. In terms of the position of the reserve, I can give you in writing, because if you look at the budget, there's a list of the reserves, and we say which one. Have we used reserve in the past? Yes, we have used significant amount of reserves. Once we use reserves to stabilize, like part of the, there was the Vauxhall plant, I think, can say you were, yeah. So we used, I think it was 2.5 million. So we do use reserves, yeah. We've got a pot of reserves right now, I think in the region of 3.5 million, and that was one of upside on the collection fund which set aside. So there's 3.5 million to use for transformation, and that's where Kate and Mark will be touching on those. So we do use reserves, but we have a principle to use reserves for one-off and not to fund ongoing expenditure. Coming back to your point on DSG, DSG is separate fund completely, but DSG, a lot of council has got so much pressures on DSG, the special education and high needs block, and if government, there's a dispensation, if government leaves that dispensation, then those council that will appear on their books as part of their own general fund. And some council potentially have to issue section 1 for just because not the general fund budget, because of the DSG. So government is working on that with, yeah, so, but especially high needs block. So coming back to your point, you will see the report on page, we talk about schools, and it says about the schools budget. I'm just trying to see which page. Yeah, I think 9.7, yeah, that's so. You will see it's talk about the school's budget, and it says the school's budget are dipping into reserves. So to balance the school budget, they had to dip into the reserves. The officers have worked closely with their schools to make sure that they've got a sustainable budget, because as a council, we've got the responsibility to work with the school forum and to make sure the schools are in a sort of financially stable position. So that is a challenge, but again, compared with a lot of council, they've got significant amount of deficit in the special. So if you look at public health as well, you will see they had to dip a little bit on reserves. So there are, as and when we have to, we do, but as a principle, if we dip into reserves, we need to have a plan to replenish that reserves in the medium term, and we don't dip into reserves to fund ongoing, because ongoing, you have to fund with ongoing income. If you start to use reserves 1 year, next year you have to then on top of that. So we have, and I can send you the list. If you look at the council budget report, there's an appendix where it talk all about reserves we have. Yeah.
I think my understanding, I think we've got 14 million in general fund reserves and about 25, nearly 24, 25 million in DSG reserves.
So the school reserve is in the region of, yeah, so the general fund reserve, which is a non-ring fence reserve, 14 million, but we've got other reserves where we can use in terms of if there's a specific risk. So we've got reserves in terms of equalization. We've got certain reserve like sinking fund as well. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Hussain.
Right. Can I ask you, in a question I will, rather than a statement, to be. Can you tell us that in terms of Luton, special needs has been increased by 40% on average in the last couple of years, and the funding for that hasn't come from the national government. Overall, there's a shortfall of 1.2 billion nationally in the children's services, particularly on the special needs.
I think, yeah, the figures, I think you know the figures better than me because you are portfolio holder in children. So those figures, yeah, it rings a bell. What I would say here is again, I'm not in the specialist. I've got my finance business partners, much more specialists. But one of the things is why special educational need transport is an issue, because for the special educational need, the funding comes from central government, but the transport element is general fund. And that transport element is going up, and I'm sure we are building more special educational needs schools, so the demand, it's come back to the demand is going up. I'll give you a simple example. Our council tax, let's say we increase by 3%. If inflation is 3%, the demographic changes, the real increase in demand, there's no funding. Yeah. So straight away you start with funding for the inflation increase, but not the real increase. So we have to find ways, and that's where we end up with starting every year with a 4 or 5 million. So coming back to your point, yeah, the transport council general fund will have. That's why you will see a big overspend in the transport budget.
What I was concentrating on really was in terms of the demand locally is far more than most of the local authorities in the eastern region. That's what I'm talking about. Luton is exceptional in terms of the special needs because we had a huge increase in the special needs in the last 4 to 5 years. And the funding hasn't come with it from the national terms. Now, can I ask you...
I think if I can, I think I will respond to that. I think if you look at the corporate peer challenge, and these are stats published by Center of Cities or something like that, Mark will correct me. The funding, there's a big gap in the funding, and when we talk about funding, we talk about all areas. Coming back to your point, schools funding, NHS funding, the local government funding, per head of population, Luton is among the worst in those areas. And that is in the Corporate Peer Challenge report. That was among our submissions. So we look at across the system and place, the amount of funding per head, there is a big gap. And when you have the schools if it's underfunded, and yeah, eventually it comes back to local government in terms of the council, some of the things we have to pick up. So absolutely right, the areas of transport definitely has gone up significantly. So we've got the stats, we've got everything, but the stat which was externally published is the per head of population, there's a big gap in our funding. Yeah, and that's across all the services, schools, health, and local government. Thank you.
And my second question really is in terms of the adult social care, I mean, 3-4 years ago, we were underspent, but since then, since the COVID and prior to that, we have had a massive increase in terms of our care packages, in terms of the people with the complex needs. And that really is not being fully funded by the national government. That's what my colleague was saying. Is that a fact? I mean, that is a major fact in terms of, despite that, we still, even now, we are overspent by million, but we managed to get a balanced budget still despite all the need, and also in terms of the homelessness, our increase is far more than even some of the London boroughs. So, I mean, we need to be taking that into account when we're talking about the demand which is not funded by the 14 years of the Tory government.
I won't comment on the last part of yeah, but I think overall, we know social care, we know the funding is there's a gap. So I won't go into a specific Luton because we've got our own analysis, but we know social care, there's a gap in especially education and transport. There is homelessness is a big issue. I think we are all hoping, I think central government they've got their challenges as well. So the whole economy is hoping that we start to get growth back, we start to get inflation, it's 2%, interest rate come down, and that hopefully we grow your economy, then there will be more income in everybody's sort of the pocket. Yeah, so the challenge is here, and the challenge has been for a long time as well. Yeah, thank you.
Whilst we're on the subject of special educational needs transport, I'm aware of one child, mainly because this particular child has behavioural problems as well, has to be taken by taxi, which involves two adults, to a specialist facility in Milton Keynes every day. Hideously expensive. It may well be that that's the only facility that can give the child what it needs, in which case, of course, we should be doing whatever we can to make sure that it happens. And it may be that this one child is the only one with that special need in town, so there is no possibility of economically setting up a facility locally. But it is a difficult area which is consistently overspent. I'm asking Matt if he would have a conversation with his colleague that looks after Children's Services Scrutiny to discuss with the chair whether this is something they might want to have a look at. I've got Councillor Khan next.
No, thank you very much again for clarifications. But one thing we need to be very clear of. This perception of gap, it exists. The funding formula probably is not friendly to Luton and a lot of other councils, as well as we talk about the police. But you're wrong when you say the money hasn't come in for special needs, because it has. We have built schools. The fact that the schools are sitting on £25 million reserves, what does that tell you? Their planning is not good. I was the portfolio holder. I know where the problems are. I know it exists. They fail to plan. And if they plan well, yes, you need reserves, but you need to be spending money to provide those services. Otherwise, it's going to build bottlenecks and it's going to cost a lot more. And when this report here, whoever's produced it, I think Kate, you've hit the nail on the head. Absolutely 100%. This is what I'm talking about. We are out of depth. The specialism isn't there. Read this. Read this. No, you don't need to cut this. Read this, and this will give you answers, because in your very report...
Now, Councillor Khan, there is a limit to the extent to which I can sit here and allow you to discuss a private paper in this public part of the meeting.
My apologies, my apologies. I'll come back to this. Some of this we can blame national, but a lot of it is that we can make improvements. If we plan well, if we deliver well, we will save money. And let's not just blame it on other factors, because there is a lot more that we can do.
Can I just respond to that? We're not blaming, we're just stating the facts. Everybody knows inflation, everybody knows demand, cost of living crisis, inflation, interest rate. Yeah. I think the point which I would make is, I'm sure we all remember COVID. The council prepared the budget in February, and suddenly we said we are not going to get 19 million of dividend, plus the dividend which was gone. The council was the first council in UK to prepare an emergency budget within 3 months. And you had to drive 24 million of, and with members as well, Councillor Khan, you were part of that team, 24 million within 3 months we put an emergency budget. There's a limit how much the council can. So we drove that, and that was 2020. We are just three years now. But the point you're making, yes, now is the next phase we are going into. The staff as well, there's capacity, how much you can do in a certain, but we stabilized the council after COVID when practically the council was really 49 million money was gone. And 3 months with officers, with everybody, we put an emergency budget to stabilize. We didn't just stabilize the council when I mean as a council, not. The council had to work across the system, stabilize LOL, the airport operator, stabilize LAL, and then stabilize the council. It was so 24 million, 22, 24 million to make sure the council, and we haven't used reserves. We are making every effort. The point you're making, yes, we'll go in the detailed report. There are capacity issues in terms of officers. There is a lot of things we can. So now we are getting into the next phase, and that's the point we will be discussing in detail. Where do we go? But just to remind, 3 years ago, we drove a 22 million pound program to stabilize the whole system. And that's probably we'll have to just put it on record. It was quite a big achievement. Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else before I get a chance to ask my questions? Councillor Hussain.
Very brief, Chair. Just as you said before, a child can cost up to $250,000 or even $500,000, just one individual child. The schools forum, if you attend it, it is controlled by the head teachers and the teachers. They make the decision how much reserve, and they do that only for one reason, because they realize there are children with a very complex needs which will need all that money to be there, and if there is 10 children, that reserve will be gone in no time at all. They do not keep it there just because the sake of it. They are the experts, and they are the ones that know where the money needs to be spent. And they make the decision. We can only recommend, and 9 times out of 10 they agree, but sometimes they say no. So we need to keep that in mind.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I've just got a couple of questions then, please. There are a number of references in the report, as far as we've got to it. I'm reminding you, we haven't finished the report yet. There are a number of references to contingencies. So about a year ago, on the advice of the Council's auditors, contingencies were discontinued. Could you remind us of why they've made a reappearance, please?
I know every time you ask me that question. So what we used to do is, let's say we bring I'll explain you and then I will come back to the specific question. So before the SIPFA review, if we've got, let's say, a savings initiative which will deliver, let's say, £1 million, okay? But sometimes in terms of timeliness, we'll say, but we won't be able to deliver the whole annualized savings. It might take 6 months. So what I used to do is to put the savings baseline as £1 million and provide 6 months of transitional contingency. If you deliver early, we get the 1 million, the base budget will be better. But if you take that 6 months, then there was a transitional contingency to help during that transition. And quite rightly, SIFA said, but because if you already put 6 months, Dave, then probably it's a disincentive from officers to deliver it early because they know they've got a 6 months contingency they can use. So that's why we changed that. We say if it's 6 months, we put 6 months, we won't put any contingency so that there's incentive for them to deliver. But any budget, I always say budget is not an exact sort of science, it's more like an art. And when you talk about viability of project, we put contingency. Anybody who is working on a program with contingency. So what we have here, Chair, is a general contingency. Looking at the budget of 162 million, there is a 156 million, there's a general contingency. Now, the general contingency is around 3 million. So this is a bit call it the known unknown or the unknown unknown, yeah? And we get through those, it's just take a fire or whatever and you can have to pay some of the costs, which might be some, because we do have uninsured costs as well. So that's 3 million on a budget of 156 million, that's every year we have, even this year we've got the contingency. And what we do is we don't release those contingencies at the beginning of the year, we wait for things to be more sort of concrete and materialized. So in the last quarter, then we'll look at specific areas where there are specific reasons for those increase in cost, and then we apply those contingency. So that's the reason, Chair, we are using those. And this year as well, we've got in the region of those contingency. But there's specific where you used to have departmental contingency sitting in department. There's no contingency in department now. Yeah.
Thank you for that. In paragraph 5, there is a reference to a review of the Council's commercial properties with further reports going back to executive. I'm asking members present this evening if they would agree with me that that report ought to come to Finance Review Group as well. Thank you. I haven't got a huge amount more. We've done the SEN transport. Oh yes, a couple of things on housing revenue account. It says the rental income is stable, An explanation of why it's stable in light of the fact that rents have gone up by 7.7% would be helpful.
I think the 7.7 you're referring to is based on central government recommendation to increase up to 7.7, and the 7.7 is for 24-25 budget. What we said is stable means in the budget and the outturn for 23-24. Maybe the word we could have reworded a little bit. So what we're saying is the rent has not, because when we set the rent, we can't change the rent in the year. So that's probably stable. But you're absolutely right, because of inflation, coming back to inflation, government guidance was for HRE we can increase by the percentage you mentioned. So 24-25 we did increase basically to cover the cost, and cost, inflation costs and material costs were more than 7.7. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's all I need to ask. If there's nothing else from anybody, we move on to capital programme, Dev.
Yeah, so I touched on capital program. The bit I would say, Chair, is about the deficit recovery and the transformation that will be coming in under the paper, which is, I think, the 12 or 13, so we might go in a bit more detail there. The capital program, we've said, because of the slippage, I think the biggest one was the stage I've already covered. And then the detail of the capital program is on page 930, 931. But what I would say here, Chair, is, again, come back to a bit about capacity. So when we prepare the capital bid, we get bids from department, and then sometimes delivery of those bids comes down to capacity of delivering. So what we will do this year is we try to agree on the capital program, be a bit more realistic about the delivery. So whether we can deliver in 1 year or 2 years, then there will be more realistic delivery plan rather than being a bit more over optimistic that we'll deliver all those programs in year, because capacity has been an issue. And the stage, I've gone into the stage, I think in terms of, you will see there is about LAL and Foxhole Home. So those are the projects where the projects are in pipeline. So, and that's where it results in some of the slippage. There is about investment properties as well, where we had sort of projects like there's TAPS as well. There was some slippage in TAPS, temporary accommodation purchase, but we've got a couple of investment which we are already looking at early part of this year. So I'm quite happy to take any sort of questions if you want to go any part of the detail of this capital program, but there's a detailed breakdown on the page 930, 931. Thanks, Chair.
Questions, comments on the capital program? Okay, transformation project, Dev.
What I would say on transformation project, it's in the report, so it's linked with the deficit recovery plan. Coming back to what Member says is absolutely to mention, it's key for us to deliver that deficit recovery plan. And then if you look at the paragraph 26, second bullet point, it refers to the medium-term financial plan where we've got 27 million to deliver, including the deficit recovery plan as well. So here the transformation project, it goes into detail. So I'm quite happy to wait for the next report which will come, the more detailed one, and you can go into those reports. But just say at this stage that delivery of the deficit recovery plan and the transformation program is key to the financial sustainability and having an affordable and sustainable budget. And the other thing I would say is not a 6-month project, it's not a 12-month project, it's a 3-year program, because some will start, some will have quick wins, some will take longer to deliver, some we might drop, some we might bring. So it's an ever-evolving program, but it has to be delivered at scale and at pace. Yeah.
Councillor Khan.
Thank you very much. With the transformation program, a lot of the things which it suggests we already know. My concern is that we spend a lot of money going to someone else to tell us what we already know. Why could we not do that ourselves?
There's two elements to that. One is our capacity. Yeah. In terms of there's an overlap between deficit recovery and transformation program. So the point you're making, yeah, there's some element of the savings which was already part of the deficit recovery and transformation. So what we're bringing to you here is, rather than saying that's what LBC delivered, that's what the external consult delivered, we are trying to bring you an overall picture. So the point you're making, the lot of savings, it's already there. Some of them we have already part of the deficit recovery plan. So coming back to your point, spending money will be spending money provided that program or the external provider has demonstrated value for money. So when we are saying here all these, we're trying to give you an overall picture of what the transformation. That doesn't mean all the information in terms of transformation and the deficit recovery plan, we are going to pay external advisors for every line there. Those which was already in the pipeline, those which are already business as usual, those will be LBC's savings. So we go into line by line, and myself, Kate, and Gerard, and yeah, we do discuss that very detailed. So we'll be paying for those where really it adds value. And the other thing is, you will see in the other report, and I think in here as well, we've got some measures now, savings to cost ratio, 1:4. So every pound we spend, we're aiming to deliver £4 savings. So to answer to point, we'll pay to demonstrate value for money. We're not just going to, if things which we've already delivered, for instance, like temporary accommodation purchase, there was TAPS 1, TAPS 2, TAPS 3. But for your information, we're putting everything. Rather than saying, this is LBC, this is transformation, this is deficit recovery plan, this is another company, or this is another consultant. But we look at every business case, we look at very detailed to make sure it delivers value for money. Yeah.
My concern is that this is the third time that since I've been elected as a councillor, we're going through a transformation plan. Each time we pay people to do the things that we knew. And as far as the restructure is concerned, most of the corporate directors will tell you where they're short on, what they need to do. And if you look at every report that we've gone through, there are recommendations upon recommendations. All the information exists, it just needs to be pulled together. That's all someone is doing, just pulling all that together, telling us what we already know.
Just coming back, fair point. I'll give you an example, supported living. Supported living, the overall budget this year, you will see spend of 3.8. And that's fall into benefits within my department. We've commissioned a piece of work, because we're not subject matter experts. We commissioned a piece of work to say exactly those who are experts, and we've done it with the council to tell us, okay, we might know that much, but they have done it 10 council, they know. And that piece of paper was done within, I think, 4 or 5 weeks. Delivery of that plan, deliver that recommendation, we are doing it in-house with additional capacity. So there are areas where Edge carried that piece of work, and then once they've done that, because those company has got the expertise of knowing a bit more than what we know. So we know quite a lot, but they might say, okay, go there and don't go there. So Edge as well, we've commissioned, and then we said staff is going to deliver on the Edge. So that's in the program, what you said in terms of the transport we're looking at. But fair point. If we are, and that's one of the things we do discuss, we are not going to just pay consultant to tell us what we know. That I think as officers we are not going to do that. But where they will add value, of course, we are going to say it's add value. But there is also an element where we've got a capacity issue as well. So when we've got capacity, then we try to bring external advisors, but there's a provision there that there will be knowledge transfer as well. So in the contract, we build knowledge transfer. But I see the point you're making, yes, we will have to make sure when we do that, it delivers value, and supported living, we are doing that. We've take additional free staff, plus additional finance support, and to deliver that supported living, looking at deliver value for money. So yes, where there's a need, we'll bring, we use, sometimes you talk about the concession agreement, we use Deloitte, we use Bevan Britain, we use Jacobs. And these are multinational companies where, yeah, so although we use those consultants, we at the end of the we officers, we have to decide, make our own judgment. So we've got the retainer fee from Deloitte, Bevan Britton on legal, and Jacobs for yeah. So those are the things we bring. But then you're right, in terms of delivery, I think stuff, yeah, we have, and I'm sure when Mark and Kate will yeah, they will explain a bit more on that. Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, my turn then. The council has appointed Human Energy Limited to advise it on this transformation programme. Human Energy Limited is a £100 company that has no employees, is exempt from the filing regulations, and so it files only very abbreviated, unaudited accounts at Companies House. I'm just wondering, that none of that, of course, means that the company won't be able to deliver what the council wants. It may well be able to. But in the light of those facts, I wonder if someone could explain what due diligence was followed before the company was appointed. Yes, Councillor Abbas, let's get an answer
It's Human
first.
Engine, isn't it? I thought the company was Human Engine. Human Energy,
Human Engine Limited.
Yeah,
is the name of the
it's
company.
Human Engine, not Human Energy. That's right. Chair, we went through 12 months ago now, actually nearly close to, a procurement process where we went out to market with a short tender, invited for a framework 7 different organisations to apply. As part of the procurement process, our procurement team were involved, our finance team were involved, to went through the rigour and sort of like substantiate the business statements and financial position of the organisation. That was validated from the point of procurement. We went through a scoring matrix. Their ability to deliver was considered, and the price of what they were offering compared to others was also considered into that process as well. And if you would like, we can share that procurement process with you. I think that's completely legitimate to do so.
They claim on their website to have quite a long list of local authority clients. Did you take up references?
Yes, we did with 3 authorities. I think in particular one, Nottingham, where they'd carried out a piece of work over an 18-month period and released savings in the region of £12 million for that authority.
Thank you very much for that. I don't want anything that I've said to imply that I have an opinion that they are not capable, because they may well be. And indeed, we all hope they will be. Anybody else? No? Where are we on the report?
Goals and objectives. I think we're on transformation. Take risks.
Yep. Okay, Dev, if you'd like to conclude your report.
Yeah, so thanks very much. And throughout the year, we have been working with FRG, and we've got the outturn, and I think, yeah, I'm looking forward to the next Q1 report. Thank you. I think you've got the recommendation which is going to executive here. So, yeah. Thank you.
Apart from noting the report, I think the only other reference we have is a request for Children's Services Scrutiny to look at SEN transport. Everybody happy with that? Thank you very much indeed. I think, Matt, that concludes the business in public, doesn't it?
That's correct, Chair.
So, can I take the resolution to move into private as read? Everybody in favour of that? Yeah. A short break, I guess, while we switch off the machinery.